Hi everyone, it's that time of the week again, and I wanted to introduce you, as you have heard in previous weeks, my puppies get a bit active at this time of night, or Tilly, some of you know from previous work we've done together, and she has a new friend, Baxter. Come on. And I wanted to introduce you to them, but I've got Tilly, Baxter's, come Tilly, come. She's had a shower and she's very excitable, so we may not be able to get her to come and play with us, but we do have a shoot next week pardon me, in week 13 for the we're going to look at the what do you call that thing, the exam. We're going to look at the exam and at least the past exam papers that Michael and Leon have put onto Blackboard for us, and we're going to look at that and go through some answers, or at least the skeleton of an answer, so that you're better prepared when it comes to the exam. You'll have some ideas on how to structure an answer to the exam. Now, while I'm talking and looking at the computer and I'm a bit distracted, I'm trying to open Blackboard. The PowerPoint slides for this week are beautiful. You could take them and create a flowchart, much like the ones we've used in other subjects, to help you remember the requirements of either a freezing order so the freezing order of assets, or the Anton Pillar order to do with the search for the documents under certain circumstances, etc. So if you've already looked at the question, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't looked at the question yet, it might sound a bit strange. But the question is, Helen supplies specialist equipment to mining companies. An American firm, Texas T, enters into a 2-year contract with her for the supply of mobile worker accommodation units. Texas T paid its first monthly payment of $100,000, but subsequently defaulted on its next 3 payments, and it's now confirmed to Helen that as a result of the drop in commodity prices, it intends ceasing productions in Australia in the next month. Helen knows that Texas T has cash deposits in Brisbane in the bank, or in Brisbane Bank, and comes to you for advice. Your default speaker has changed to speakers. Okay, so my speaker setup has changed. I'm hoping you can still hear me. I'll just check because the Zoom, oh yeah, so my microphone looks like it's still working. So that's a good thing. No, can't do that. Okay. So yeah, she comes to you for advice. She wants to recover the money she's still owed, which is now $300,000. She also wants to claim damages from Texas T for breach of contract. And she confirms that when she entered into the contract with Texas T, she provided confidential technical information about the design of her equipment, and she's concerned now that Texas T has sold it to some rivals. So you can advise Helen. And this is why I was talking before about those 2 particular functions or instruments or procedures. Firstly, the freezing of the bank account for Texas T in Brisbane, which, as you can imagine, is a serious thing to consider, and the court takes it seriously. And secondly, the search power or search order, the Anton Pillar order. Again, super serious. The court wants a very high threshold of evidence when it considers whether or not it will do that. Now, if I go to your PowerPoints, I'll show you what I mean, pardon me, about how good they are. They are always good, but this particular set are from week 11, and Michael and Leon were saying to do the week 11 work first before you attempt the question. But opening these PowerPoints, and I'll share the screen because I can do that now. I know how to work Zoom. And I just click here and I choose these. Okie doke. So, excuse me. The advice you have to Helen is that while she prepares her claim against Texas Tea, she's going to need to protect the potential, uh, money that she needs to action against, if you like. So you've got the two official names that you will hear used in the profession: the Morava order or the Anton Pillar order. Basically, freezing and searching. Both serious orders for the court to make, high threshold of evidence, but if your client needs them, then that's what they've got to do. All right, some excellent cases to help with some beautiful quotes to help us really understand what the court's saying. So as you go through the slides, you'll see Cardile and LED Builders mentioned a few times. In the period between when the claim first arises against the other party, so when Helen first wants to take action against Texas Tea, and when the claim finally comes to court, either the defendant absconds, transfers money out of the jurisdiction, and that satisfaction of the judgment is put at risk. And this is where these two functions kick in: the freezing order and a search order. The federal court has practice notes, as all the courts do, but the one that Michael and Leon are referring to here is 2.6 of a federal court practice note, which tells you it's an extraordinary interim remedy. It has a big power to restrict another party's assets, and it's taken seriously. This slide, slide 4, gives you the 5 elements that need to be shown by the plaintiff in order to obtain the Morava order. The plaintiff must have a good arguable case. So Helen's going to have a good case even before she starts to consider applying for the order. The defendant, Texas Tea, has to have assets subject to the jurisdiction of the court. Well, that's the money in the bank. There's a danger that a judgment will be unsatisfied to the disposition of the remedy. Well, it's a multinational company. It could transfer money out of the jurisdiction quite easily. For the court's discretion and balance of convenience favours the granting of the remedy. So again, well, not again, but certainly one of the highlights of this particular application is that the court exercises discretion. And that means you want a strong case and a strong argument to convince them to go with you. The plaintiff has provided undertakings to the court, including the usual undertaking as to damages. Now, we've come across this before in other places where the court requires the plaintiff to give an undertaking that the plaintiff will pay the damages of the defendant or another party should their original claim fail. Now, we've seen it in equity. We've seen it where a party might want interlocutory injunction, if you think back to those requirements. And you had to consider the plaintiff providing a undertaking as to damages for the application for an interlocutory injunction. And that's the same here. Okay, now your slides go through and focus on each of those 5 requirements for the Morava order, for the freezing order, in detail. So what is a good arguable case or judgment? Pardon me. So NYMEA Maritime Corp and Trave, GmbH and Company, give you an idea, one which is more than barely capable of serious argument, yet not necessarily one where the judge believes it would have a better than 50% chance. So that's not necessarily, I think, a high threshold, but as far as your client's concerned, when you're giving advice, and in our case for Helen, you want the strongest case you've got. You know, you want something that is actionable. You don't want anything frivolous or trivial to use to borrow from other subjects that we've dealt with. You want something that has some legal legs, as I'd say. Rule 260D of the Queensland UCPR is then mentioned. And you can see there that the rule applies if the applicant has a good arguable case on an accrued or prospective cause of action that is justifiable or justiciable, I beg your pardon, in the court, the actual court that they're applying to, or another court, and there's sufficient prospect that the other court will give judgment in favour of the applicant, and there is sufficient prospect. So they're thinking about, is it sufficient? Is the evidence sufficient for either judgment or arguable case? Sorry. Evidence required. We've got affidavit evidence that goes through, it's quite straightforward. B, the assets are in the court's jurisdiction. The Morava order operates against the defendant personally to restrain it from dealing with assets under the defendant's control. Makes sense? Reference to Cardial and LED. C, the danger of an unsatisfied judgment. Balance of convenience and discretion of the court. And Cardial again offers you those discretionary conditions the court's going to wonder or consider. Yep. You see why I like these PowerPoints. Undertakings. Usual undertakings as to damages. Rule 264 of the UCPR. So moving through the 5, I think we have, well, we've got enough evidence in our fact scenario to say that Helen should definitely go and make that application and at least prepare her argument in the strongest terms. If this was the exam, you might consider pointing out what she'd need to show. And if you didn't think she could apply for that Morava order, then why? Why do you think it's going to fail, or why do you think it might be lacking? And I'm not saying you would spend all of your time on that, but you would make, you'd show the marker that you know what the 5 requirements are, and you can see how they might apply and how they may not apply. All right, so this search order, or Anton Pillar order, this is to do with the confidential information that she believes the other side has on-sold. So again, you've got 4 essential preconditions described on the slide you're looking at. You want an extremely strong prima facie case. So these are sorts of powers of searching that are normally reserved for police or anti-corruption commission. Really very serious, and the court takes it seriously. So you want an extremely strong prima facie case. You want, secondly, to be able to show that the damage, potential or actual, will be very serious for the plaintiff. So Helen's going to want some projections around the damage that this might do if her confidential information is passed on. Thirdly, there must be clear evidence the defendants have it in their possession in the first place. And fourthly, that there's a real possibility that they might destroy that, or, in our suspicion, on-sell it to other competitors. There's some other considerations there. And again, another reason why I love the slides, they go through and address each of the 4 criteria in detail. And you would consider those and apply them to our fact scenario. And I think you would have some scope there to argue for and against. But on my reading of the facts, on the very bare minimum that we have, I think that you could put together an argument or an application for Helen that she could get the Morava and the Anton Pillar order, and hopefully she then can pursue her claim, but also find that they haven't done anything untoward with her confidential information, and it might be as easy as that she can obtain the material that she'd given them in the first place, prevent them from on-selling or destroying, and it is, you know, it might be rectified easily, but she's got to have that ability in the first place to make the applications and convince the court that these 2 serious orders should be made. So that is this week's tutorial. I don't think it's the most challenging that we've done in commercial remedies. What I'm looking forward to for you is attacking these exam questions next week. So I'll close that and I'll see if I can show you what I mean. Oh God. Hang on. So go back to learning resources. You may not be able to access them yet, but you go down to week 13, open the tutorial. There's a link. I'll just show you if I can share the screen again. Share the screen. There it is. Any second now. Good. So this is the screen I'm on. Previous exam questions there. Click on the link. We might get them. We might not. Great. So what we will do is go through them. There's a few different ones. Maybe this is a screen that you're not supposed to see. I wonder if it's one of my secret squirrel screens. Doesn't matter. Your screen sharing is paused. That's fine. What we'll do, if you can, and I would do it this way, have a look at those exams before we meet, before we get together on Zoom, and then have an idea how you might answer it, or at least a skeleton of your answer. And then when we get together and go through it properly, it'll make much more sense to you. Okay. All right, and I'll show you Tilly and Baxter next week. It'll be end of semester treat. Okay, all the best.